fun begins.
How's it going?
Hello.
Well, hello there.
What's up, everyone? Hybrid Toy Reviews here, and welcome to this week's Black Series ranking. Today, we're going to be ranking every figure from Solo: A Star Wars Story. There are 15 unique figures that were produced for this movie, and I gotta say, it's a pretty thorough spread. They've covered pretty much all the bases. There's a couple more I'd like, but something really cool about this movie is this movie featured one of the first waves to have photoreal application to the figures. So even though a couple of them have like double pinned knees, a little ugly there. They're generally very nice looking action figures, and they're not very high on my list of figures that need totally redone. So it's really cool having a list of figures that are kind of on equal playing field. So that's really nice. This was a very difficult list. It was easy to put a couple of them very, very high up the list, like on the bad end. But the number 1 through like 10 spot, very difficult. So that said, let's go ahead and get into my ranking and see if our thoughts align on how the Solo: A Star Wars Story figures stack up. In spot number 15 is Moloch. Now, Moloch is a very well done, unique alien figure. He suffers from being large and therefore deluxe, and having about 7 seconds of screen time. He is in charge of pursuing Han and Kira as they're trying to escape Corellia in the beginning of the movie. And so you kind of like see his speeder chasing them a lot, but there's not a huge amount of focus on the guy himself. It's, again, a beautifully done, very well designed action figure. A little bit of a traffic cone since he's a slug man and doesn't have legs, but I'll give him that. But it's just one of those things where it's like, the significance is so minimal. And he hit heavy discount, deep clearance, because who wants to spend $30 for a guy that you don't even remember was in the movie, unfortunately. Spot number 14 goes to Val. If you don't have her in your collection, you can probably find her at Ollie's if you go to a couple of them. Val, unlike Moloch, actually got a brief bit of screen time. She was mostly there in the first act during the train heist, and she was one of the crew members who did not make it out of the heist. She it's hard to call her a cool character, but she wasn't like a not cool character. She was just kind of there. Credit where it's due. Her figure has an amazing photoreal likeness, and her costume has a whole bunch of like hoses and stuff on it, and they translate to figure form well. However, I know a ton of people broke those hoses on their figures. I remember it was a big QC thing when it first came out. So I have nothing bad to say about the figure. I think they did a really good job capturing Val. Val is just insignificant in the grand scheme of the movie, unfortunately. But it's objectively a good figure if you like the character. In spot number 13 is Chewbacca. He was a Target exclusive. It was the same Chewbacca that we'd gotten like 5 times in the line at this point. However, he got a unique harness because his bag had 2 straps on it in this movie, and he came with his shotgun because he didn't have a bowcaster, and he came with some like removable goggles with a piece of elastic on them. It's the most different Chewbacca has ever looked in a movie, and while I appreciate the design, it's just one of those things where there's a lot more exciting figures at this point in the line. This was, even with some different accessories, it's just another Chewbacca, Everyone had at least one at this point, and so, it's fine. He's a good figure. I got one signed, by Juno Suotamo. Like, it was really a good figure. Just from here, we start getting into, like, the really exciting ones. In spot number 12 is Kira in her Corellia outfit, aka her least exciting outfit of the entire movie. Kira shows up throughout the rest of the movie wearing some extravagant costumes. I mean, she was trying to compete with prequel trilogy Natalie Portman. Like, they were putting her in some fancy duds. And this was just her least exciting outfit. I would have wanted any other Kira besides her, unless we had gotten the Corellia White Vest Han Solo, which we didn't, because at least he would then complement this figure figure. So it's a fine figure with a nice Amelia Clark likeness. She comes with her pistol, which I don't believe she had in the beginning of the movie at all. I feel like that's a later in the film accessory. It's just like I just kind of wanted a different Kira, but this figure is not bad. It's a pretty good, version. And considering it's the only Kira we have, I'd argue you need her for your solo shelf. In spot number 11 is the Range Trooper. This was the stormtrooper they used to market the movie, the magnet boots guy that walks up and down like super fast trains, and he lives in the mountains and stuff. The figure is actually a pretty good adaptation of the design into action figure form. He is big and he is bulky and he has some protruding boots going on. And much like would happen in real life, it hinders the articulation a little bit, which is kind of why I've put him at this end. He's a good representation of what he's supposed to be. I'd also argue, like, almost every figure, like basically every figure on this list is a very good figure. But just considering that these guys ultimately didn't end up being all that significant, although they are very cool, and it's just a little bit clunky in action figure terms, not by fault of the figure, but by fault of the design. I just can't put it higher on the list. But the Range Trooper itself still is a very good figure. And in spot number 10 is Rio Durant, our short little four-armed guy who makes jokes. Nope, I'm not talking about Grease from Jedi Fallen Order Survivor. Hasbro, get on that. But we got Rio. Rio came with his goggles and a couple of pistols, and he actually turned out really, really good. He did not have a huge presence in the movie. He was, again, one of those members of the team that did not survive the initial heist, but he did leave a permanent mark on our hearts. We do like Rio Durant around here. And I gotta say, it's always cool getting a very unique design, in this case, 4 arms, and seeing what the Hasbro Star Wars team does with that. I feel like giving us a little bit of more complicated design than just your average bipedal human. It's an interesting challenge that they rose to the occasion for. Rio Durant's actually a very fun figure to pose. So ultimately, I ended up putting him at 10 because even though he's a good figure, he's maybe just not as significant as what's to come. In spot number 9, I'm putting Enfys Nest. She was the pack-in with her speeder bike, and I gotta say, I said it on the vehicle ranking video last week. I kind of wish she had gotten a solo release. I feel like she probably would have sold fairly well on her own. Her speeder bike was just not in the movie a whole lot. And the figure itself actually turned out really good. I like the soft goods on the cape. The helmet and armor are really nicely detailed. Her weapon is just a little bit of a club-looking thing, admittedly. That's kind of what she's rocking in the movie. You don't really see her pulling up blasters so much. I do wish it had come with a removable helmet so that we could get an Aaron Kellyman likeness, but I accept that that was probably kept secret from even Hasbro until the time of the movie dropping. But the figure itself articulates pretty well, which is good because she needs to fit on that bike, but is objectively a nice action figure. Again, there's a lot of really good figures from this movie, and I think middle of the pack ultimately is where she goes, because I can say what she's missing in some of these other figures I can't say that for, so that's why she's in spot number 9. In spot number 8 is Dryden Voss, the ultimate villain of the movie, and he's actually a pretty good figure. The Paul Bettany likeness is awesome. He has a cool feature where his scars are more pronounced and like very vibrantly red if you put the figure briefly in like the freezer and get it cold, which is awesome. He comes with his dagger blade things, both of them, which are very nice. And yeah, it captures the look of the character perfectly. The outfit is just slightly boring because it's man in suit, Marvel Legends has a million of those. This is the Star Wars version of that, and it is unique because you don't see a lot of people in like dress clothes in the universe, so like I'm not ultimately knocking it. It is a really good representation of exactly what it's supposed to be, but there's just some somewhat more exciting figures to come. But I do really like Dryden Voss a lot and think that you should have him on your shelf somewhere. In spot number 7 is Tobias Beckett. He comes with his pistols. He's wearing his navy like full body jumpsuit, and then he's got his tan like trench coat over top of that. The trench coat is kind of permanently sculpted in like drawing mode, which I don't super like that. You know when they have like it pulled back so he's reaching and grabbing his pistol out of his holster. I'm not like knocking it, but it kind of leaves you like only able to put him in one pose. But the Woody Harrelson likeness is actually really good on this one. Like I said, very early days of photoreal, but photoreal did take the world by storm as soon as they started putting it in figure form. And yeah, I do ultimately like the Stryden Voss figure a lot, and I do just put him in that drawing pose. But it just I do wish there was a little bit more, like opportunity, without that coat permanently molded that way. But still, Tobias Beckett, very nice figure. In spot number 6, the titular hero himself, Han Solo. So, from the neck down, this figure is very nice and recreates Han's main look for the entire, like, second and third act of the movie. I do like Han's brown coat. He is very snazzy in this film. The likeness is kind of where it throws me a little bit. The photoreal is nice, but the head sculpt looks maybe just a smidge wide. He looks just a touch fat faced, and then there's just angles on it where you kind of look at it from like the side, and you're like, oh, that's actually pretty good. But then you get that dead on, and you're like, it's okay. And that's kind of why I can't put him any higher than this. Objectively, I still think he's an excellent figure and one that you should have in the collection. But the likeness just it isn't perfect, and there are figures that I do consider perfect higher than this. So that's why Han is in spot number 6. In spot number 5 is the Mimban Stormtrooper. This was a Walmart exclusive back in the day, and from the neck down, it is that original Stormtrooper sculpt, which is very, very dated, but it has a new helmet and it has the soft goods, like poncho cloak thing. And the thing about this figure that is absolutely superb is the heavy weathering. Mimban is a very muddy planet, and this guy comes in a cool box that has the dark brown, muddy like backdrop in it instead of the red normal. And then the figure is just mucked up in all the best ways. He is filthy, and I love it. I have a number of these guys in the collection. It's something that I would like to see them redo with the new Stormtrooper body, but acknowledge it's niche enough that it's probably not happening unless they appear in some updated media. But all said, I do really like this action figure a lot and recommend you pick one up if you don't have him in your Stormtrooper collection already. Very, very fun figure. In spot number 4 is L337. I don't care what you think about the character, I'm talking about the action figure here. She was in a decent portion of the second act of the film and has a very unique design. She is very lanky and very tall, but then also has that kind of like weird flat rounded head, and then there's all the exposed wiring on it, and she's an extremely intricately well sculpted figure. She's a little hard to keep balanced because of the teeny tiny feet. I mean, makes the B1 battle droid feet look huge, but just a very unique design that I feel the Black Series team absolutely nailed. Again, it's not about whether you like the character or not. I know she's a bit much for some, but I do generally like this action figure. It's just a very fun, very out there design. In spot number 3 is Lando Calrissian. The Donald Glover likeness on this is really good. I like the cocked eyebrow, the kind of sneery smirk, like just Lando charm going on. Again, very good likeness. The outfit is excellent. You see him rocking the black and yellow duds for a lot of the movie. And then the cape is excellent. I wish it was soft goods because I hate plastic goods. But it is what it is. It's very soft and pliable plastic. It gets out of the way so you can at least continue to pose him. I like his blaster. It has that removable suppressor. Just got some fun options there. It's a really good figure. One that I think is essential if you have a solo shelf going on. And if you don't have a solo shelf going on, I also think you should because these have all been very good figures so far. In spot number 2 is the Imperial Patrol Trooper. We see these guys on Corellia in the beginning of the movie, and honestly, I thought we would see them a little bit more. We haven't seen them in a lot of media outside of this movie and Jedi Survivor, to the best of my memory. I don't think they've popped up in any of the other shows, but this guy is really cool. He is basically a Stormtrooper police officer. So he's got a little bit more of like a urban, like in the city kind of vibe. He's got the pants instead of the thigh armor going on, so he's a little bit more mobile. He comes with a baton tucked into his belt, his little pistol. I love the tweak of the Stormtrooper helmet, of like instead of having separate eyes, it's a little bit more of a visor. Very, very fun design, very cool, very good looking figure. Now, you see these guys riding speeders in the movie, and I would actually argue I would have rather they had not done the Enfys Nest speeder and single packed her, and instead offered this guy packed with the Stormtrooper speeder, because I did like that tall kind of wedge, speeder design going on. In spot number 1, I'm putting Han Solo in his Mimban Trooper gear. So you have Mimban Stormtroopers, then you have these like Mimban Troopers where they're wearing more fabric with like just a chest plate going on, and then there's like an officer looking like bull helmet with goggles and a breathing mask, and then there's like a poncho cloak going behind him. It's a really, really cool design. And then Han, is with the Empire in the beginning of the movie by convenience, not by choice. And so this was a good opportunity to get another Han Solo. Unlike the standard Han Solo that is in spot number 6, they tweaked the likeness on this one. I feel this is a much better offering, and this guy works double duty in that you could acquire more of these and just leave the helmet on and have these Mimban Trooper guys on your Stormtrooper shells as well. It's a very, very cool design. Not a design that we see on screen a lot, but it is just a cool design all the same. It's a really cool action figure, and one that I do like having in the collection a good deal. So that's my ranking of the 15 figures that came out for Solo: A Star Wars Story. What do you think? Am I anywhere in the right range? What would you change? Do you have any of these figures? Honestly, even though some of them, like Val and Moloch, are like somewhat deep cuts in the general realm of the movie, I do think that these are all very good action figures, and if you are a fan of Solo: A Star Wars Story like I am, I'm going to be honest, it's one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I like that you can go into it, and not really think a whole lot about stuff outside of it. It's a very nice little contained story. If you like that movie, I think you should have a Solo shelf going on, just a little display, and it's only 15 figures, most of which are available fairly cheap, like under retail. It would not be a difficult collection to put together, and I think that if you did grab them, you wouldn't be upset with any of these. They're all very good figures. So, that said, that's where I'm going to leave y'all. I really like this collection of figures, and this list was very difficult, Like Moloch, Val, Chewbacca, Kira, Range Trooper, I was like, yeah, 11 through 15, those were pretty easy. But once we started getting into the top 10, I was like, oh man, like this was a very hard list to do. I would argue that a lot of these could be interchanged because, again, just so many of them are so good. But that's what I got to say. Let's be cool in the comments and keep it chill. Let's have a conversation about the figures. May the Force be with each and every one of you. I look forward to talking to y'all in the next video. So until then, have a good one. Bye.